Hey there, Bob from Oregon's Constant Gardener. Welcome to the OCGFAM show. To you, my YouTube buddies, what's going on? Viewer questions 27. Scott, how you doing? Mike P. Cars 6526 would love to see a show on how to best use the line for indoor tropical plants, e.g., that means, for example, I think, Monstera, Pathos, Sansevieras, and perennials, hydrangeas. Do any of those words other than hydrangeas make sense to you?
Yeah.
You know all that
well,
shit.
OCG's now carrying houseplants for the first time in 20 years, which we vowed never to carry houseplants after leaving the last store we were at and seeing what houseplants bring to the
table.
store. Yeah, you know, things like pests and mold and mildew, but they got a pretty good team over there making sure that they're getting clean lives of plant stock. But
so some people would say, well, you just water the thing every month or so and it's going to be fine. But are there gains to be made from actually nutriating your exotic houseplants?
For sure. There's definitely, I mean, between just the general health of the plant, the growth of the plant, yeah,
Treasures in heaven.
They enjoy it, huh?
Treasures in heaven.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, it's I mean, to go into detail, it would be, you know, an entire new show, which will be something we're going to do on this Amazon thing.
But holy shit, look at it's blooming 5 times, not one time. It's, you know,
it made the bankers give us a seat at the table when we needed another loan when we gave him some of our Gaia to feed his orchids. And then he was like, oh my gosh, my orchids won't stop blooming.
Yeah.
Once one spike dies, a new spike forms. Or, you know, when you give them the right forms of digested for nutrition, their ability to just be healthy and grow and perform and flower. And if you have flowering indoor perennials or flower tropicals, they just want to flower so much more.
This would be giving them what they want as opposed to what is the absolute god cheapest thing you could put together.
Yeah, or what Scott's Miracle Grow says that, you know, all plants want is, you know, triple 30 or you know, the soluble salts. And, you know, it really comes down to figuring out what the plants their botany, in a botany book, what is their nutritional demands, and then going from there and reducing the bottles down. They don't need a ton of fertility. Most tropical plants live off of, you know, moisture in the air and the minerals in the soil. That's it.
That don't exist in your home that you have to simulate in a way that's not. Yeah. So Porsches. Porsches.
Porsches?
Porsches. If you look at the Dodge and the Ferrari and all these things, they'll always tell you how much horsepower it has. Porsche doesn't really tell you because it has less, but it performs better and it goes around the track faster because it's built better from the bottom up instead of being hitting some vanity metrics 30-30-30.
So the nutrients are the Porsches?
Yes.
Gotcha.
The calcium is the Porsches of like, hey, this will actually work. You know, the other thing too is funny is like you take a Porsche and you want to make your Dodge go faster. You spend $800 or $1,200, whatever, on a turbo, and it goes way faster. You'll spend $45,000 to get 5 more horsepower out of your Porsche.
Oh yeah,
because they've taken this little thing and made it perfect.
Oh yeah,
and there's really no way to make it better, and that is God or the Holy Spirit or the natural energy of the universe have made everything pretty perfect. And to fix that, maybe you should just give it what it wants instead of trying to improve upon it with some sort of synthetic
cater
thing.
to it.
Yes.
And then just don't overfeed it, because I think most people overfeed their tropicals.
Yeah.
I think people overwater their tropicals, and most houseplants' death are drownings.
Yeah.
So it's avoiding the heavy moisture. This person knows how to treat their houseplants already. But I think if it came down to it, for the most part, depending on if they're flowering tropicals, non-flowering tropicals, it really comes down to I use either the Gaia Medusa, just Medusa Athena. Demeter's often and a lot. But we'll do more shows on the tropicals. I know at home I have my own orchids. I've got a few different tropical plants. I live in not in the best sun location, so I don't get a lot of indoor sun.
Yeah, but it's like a little hole in the sky from the trees.
Pretty much. It's a little tiny divot. So, I can't go in depth on this show, but we are planning on doing more and showing more via videos and how-tos and soil drenches and and how often. Right now, if you're using like the Spartan or the Greek regimen, taking your excess from those feedings and diluting it down about 50% and using that instead of discarding it, but adding that to your houseplants.
A little bit left, put some water in it, pour it
out. I'll love you for that. But overfeeding them is probably your second biggest killer versus watering too much.
One shot.
Oh yeah, no.
Big, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it just takes the guesswork out of everything else. So it's like using your Peters time release slow pelleted chemical.
Scratch a little into the soil.
Natural. So yeah, top dress it, throw a little extra on the soil.
Okay, good answer. Drippin' Buds 8822. Hard to imagine. Drippin' Buds seems like a great name, but that there's 8,800 people that had that before him. What?
8821.
I feel like I'm off base today. What if my water has?
I'm definitely watch subscription numbers drop.
They're just falling.
Thank God we don't monetize, because this could have been a hurtful one.
And we'd be blaming the algorithm. It's not. It's us. Make a good show, the algorithm will take care of you. What if my water has high sulfur in it already? Remember we were talking about the sulfur, someone was like, hey, put a little sulfur. Well, you were saying, don't do a lot, do a little sulfur.
Yeah.
What if you got sulfur in your water? It smells like eggs certain times of the year.
Well, you must live in Traverse City, Michigan. It's high sulfur up in there. For the most part, if it's I would need to see the number that's coming out in a lab report.
Sure.
But having sulfur in your water, that means nothing. Okay. Sulfur's strong.
Yeah.
A little sulfur can smell like a bad fart. So no question on that. And I've seen up in upper Michigan, they have a lot of sulfur in a lot of their water sources and alkalinity, and their terpenes and their trichomes and their flower production, no problems. So
not necessarily a problem.
No, it's not. You probably wouldn't want to use Persephone if you're using your tap water with sulfur in it. And if you can, I'd get a lab test done.
What's going on here?
Yeah, call your local municipal. They'll have the level. There's a certain level of sulfur. I'd have to go look at my notes on, the balance of calcium, magnesium, manganese, and sulfur. But there is a level that becomes just zero return on investment. I mean, it's just too much. It can become harmful to the biology in the soil. But if it's just trace amounts that gives you that smell, then most likely it's just like using the calcium lignin sulfate without the carbon source.
But you certainly wouldn't want to double up on it.
No.
Already got a sulfur situation going on.
Yeah, avoid other sulfates if you have sulfur in your water, because you're putting enough in there to do what the plant wants it to use it for. But if it's too much, you're probably doing more harm in the soil than you are doing good. So get a lab. I mean, where your water is sourced from should give you a lab test for it. So check that out.
Good answer. Christy Trejo, Low 4M. Hey there, Bob. It is one of your YouTube buddies, Mr. Vinegar Bee Soda here, rocking the nectar sample pack, using the test strips for pH. My baby Charlene is just loving it. I do not have a way to test for alkalinity or ppm. Should the preventative Herc flush be my go-to, since I am flying fairly bat-like blind here? Appreciate everything y'all do. We love you, and we'll see you tomorrow. So, you've decided to
watch our show too many times.
Yes.
You're picking up Bobisms.
The big kahuna.
Now you just go into the bathroom, look in the mirror, and say, no!
No!
Stop!
If you, for whatever reason, are not going to dig in on alkalinity and ppm, which are probably not... Those are the minor issues as opposed to pH and getting your watering right. And those
pH
sorts
is
of things.
first key, and then ppms would be your second meter to buy. They reached out with this email as well, and the question was, what's more important to have right now, a ppm meter or an alkalinity meter? And it's like, honestly, the hard part about the alkalinity, I mean, it's a great little tool. You'll use it 4 times. Nothing's going to change for the next year. So now you've got a $80 meter that only tests the one thing.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, if you went down to a pool store or going to Walmart for the little strips.
Yeah, I've got those. I've got a hot tub now.
Yeah, hot tub one.
And it's got alkalinity as one of the things on there.
Yeah, and it'll just give you a reference. Yeah. It's not going to be accurate, but it's going to give you a
ballpark,
low, medium, high.
Okay. Do I have a problem?
Exactly. basically, too, if your water source is a high pH, generally, if you got high pH water and there's white film on your glass or your shower doors, then you've got high alkalinity.
Sure.
It's just where the calcium carbonate is coming from. So knowing that number specifically, although it's a nice reference to kind of go off of, it's not your driving force, because if we know what your pH in your soil is doing, we know what your water source pH is to start with, we know how we can combat what potentially is going to happen because of your water. By the time we get into bloom, we know that we can either add in some calcium carbonate to build in the alkalinity, or we can start feeding more acidically to try to break down the excess alkalinity that some of these people have in their water sources. So
the alkalinity is significant in how it affects the pH, not in and of itself, in the big picture of simplifying the equation.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about alkalinity is if it's where it's supposed to be, it literally is a throttle for the whole nutrient regimen.
Oh, so it's a way to make a real difference.
Yeah, and if you don't have any alkalinity and your soil's always drifting down to the pH and you have no alkalinity in the soil, you're always fighting trying to get the nutrition into the plant because everything's off balance because there's no alkalinity. But building that in with calcium carbonate, whether you build a charger like OCG has built out, those CO2 chargers that Pig taught us how to build, CO2 reactors, or just knowing my water is garbage or my water is RO or my water is distilled, knowing that, I know it's stripping the alkalinity out of my potting soil all the time. So now that I'm aware of this situation, by the time I go into bloom, I'll make sure to add in calcium carbonate right before I go into bloom, so when the plant triggers over, pH is corrected, it starts to kind of raise back up, and it has this stockpile of alkalinity in the carbonate that will be continuously broken down through the RO distilled or garbage water, and that will convert all of that into pure alkalinity. And so you can create your own alkalinity. If your water source doesn't have it naturally, you can make it in the soil just by adding limestone in.
Is alkalinity and dealing with that ever a opportunity if it's not a problem? I mean, it's either a problem or it's not, but if it's not a problem, can it be an opportunity, or is this always something where I'm just either fixing my water or not?
Yeah, the problem with that is a lot of people wanted to run out by Chimera because it's a bloom
think,
enhancer,
oh shit.
And it's like, no, it's actually a pH adjuster for bad water or bad soil situations. So if you have no problems and things are fine, your pH in your soil 6.6 every time you do it.
Nothing to be mind here.
Yeah, don't worry about what's happening. Your alkalinity is not an issue. It's now how to feed them more aggressively.
Sure.
But if your pH is always dumping on you, then you have an alkalinity issue. You don't have enough. If your pH is always climbing in flower in the soil, that means your water is too alkaline, and we got to figure out how to react that or reduce the alkalinity in the water so that it doesn't deposit so much of the carbonate in the soil, which then affects the pH that will ultimately go up. So I guess back to the question is
well, alkalinity
is a Herc flush.
Well, alkalinity you're going to see because it's going to start falling away from you as you get
either high or low. I mean, if your plant starts to discolor and you check your slurry and your pH is way too high, you have too much alkalinity in your regular water, so we got to figure out how to react that. Or if it's way too low, your water is stealing it from the soil and making your pH low.
Okay.
The question is, since I don't have those meters like to take a slurry test, he's got our test. I mean, he's got our litmus, so he knows that it's mid sixes, things are fine, but I don't know the parts per million. Do I still use a Herculean flush in the days if I don't know? And it's to kind of clarify that, and our feed, flush, feed, tea, that whole method really it's a preventative flush, meaning you don't have any problems.
Yeah. There's
no real issues. It's just instead of going feed, tea, feed, water,
reset.
Feed, tea. It's just saying feed. We're going to kind of clean up what's left over and get rid of the excess with the preventative flush. 10 to 15 mils per gallon is ample. Then go right back to feed. But that little flush day isn't a corrective. It's not. It's just to kind of reset that root zone so we keep the balance of leftover nutrition, leftover salts, leftovers kind of being pushed down below the root zone so that the plants can then accept the next 2 rounds of feeding.
So we can keep pushing and nutriting in the way we want to without building up something that we don't see coming.
Yeah.
But if you could get a ppm on there, it would be nice. But if you don't, you certainly should be following a feed flush situation.
It doesn't hurt at all.
Yeah.
And then now if you get to a feed and you're looking at your plants and they're just noticeably hungry, because I got a lot of these guys with LEDs where they're 2 times feeding some of these different recipes and just barely keeping that 300 parts per million in the soil. Those guys don't really have that luxury of doing a feed flush, because if you do the flush at 300, now you're at 200.
Yeah.
And the plants are now not being able to access any of the reserves in the soil. So you really don't want to keep doing the preventative flushes if your plants are yellowing or there's discoloration or there's something wrong. That's when knowing your ppms is a good idea, because you'll get a sense of, am I overfed, am I underfed? And a lot of times too, pH is driving that number. So if your plants are discolored and your pH is 5.5, we figured it out. If your plants are discolored and your pH in your soil is 7.4, we figured it out. We just have to adjust our pH in our feeds until we get that soil pH corrected.
If I've got some Holy Diver Jesus LEDs, though, and I'm tripling up on my feed, I probably have a ppm meter.
Oh, I would hope so.
So that,
spent the money on the lighting than buy the meter.
But if you're just trying to grow 4 in the backyard, then
or 2 in the
flush,
closet. Most likely you probably don't have the 4x8 LED panel that's running at 68% on a VPD of 92.
Your meter needs new bearings in it on the yard. Okay. So for anyone serious about it, you have that, and anyone just kind of trying to get started with this, just flush.
And, if I have to choose on the meters too, I recommend not going cheap on pH meters.
Sure.
Because a cheap pH meter is garbage.
Yeah.
And
unreliable, breaks. It's cheaper to buy a nice one.
It's better to have 4 pieces of litmus paper. Measuring that way.
But the mechanism of a ppm meter is a much simpler.
It's literally electromagnetism. It's literally reading the electro waves in the soil from hydrated salts. So it's how it's reacting. It sends energy through it. Whatever it picks up on the other end, there's your parts per million.
And this is 2 pieces of metal, not this weird glass ball that's got to be perfectly.
You don't need to keep it hydrated. You don't. I just rinse it. But you can buy this $50 one of those and be
sure.
And really, again, now here's where it hurts to all of us, because we use like 8 meters over there, pH meters, just to quality control our stuff.
Yeah.
All 8 meters read differently.
Yeah.
In the same damn solution. So it's learning your meter, learning how your plants look to the meter readings, and then using your meter as basically a reference. It's a start point. You may be 6.7 to 7.1 is your optimal, where that same, if you brought that solution to me, it may be 6.4 to 6.7.
So in race cars, they have the wind tunnel.
Yep.
And they're not trying to make the best car in the wind tunnel. They're trying to make the wind tunnel that mimics what actually happens out on the real world, so that they can,
see what they're doing.
Yeah, so you're not trying to get the perfect meter, where you're trying to get some sort of I can correlate this meter to real life. So even if it's wrong, but you understand the ratio between the two, or the connection between the two,
that's it.
That's what you're looking for.
No, and that's like knowing your plant, learning your plant, watching your plant, listening to your plant. Your meters are just references to what that plant is looking like today.
Yeah.
And so if you're taking notes and you're paying attention and you know that every day that's super gorgeous and green, well, shoot, freaking homeboy out on the East Coast, who's an engineer. Engineers. They're an interesting bunch. They're the thinkers.
Yeah.
Well, it's 451 parts per million. Better flush. It's 200. Better feed 4 times. It really is this constant roller coaster, because it's perfection. Engineers want to be perfect. They're all numerical. They're down to the precision points. So plants are like us. We really kind of can swing both ways pretty hard before we die.
The Boeing spaceship. Sorry, I'm going off. The Boeing, their spaceship, the Elon's one went fine. The reason theirs fucked up is because it had to adjust its course, and instead of doing it once every second, it was doing it 100 times a second, and it used up all its fuel.
Yeah.
When if it just it just was going nuts on that, and that's kind of the same thing of overcorrecting, or not overcorrecting, correcting too much.
It's overcorrecting because then you overcorrect and you're going back. You're playing ping pong with yourself, and it's a bad game. It's a roller coaster ride to hell. So it's one of those where give it space and give it time. Yeah. If you do something, give it a couple days to react. Don't sit there and go, well, I did this, tested tomorrow, this is what happened, I did this again. No, give it a day or two. If you're doing corrections, give it a few days, let it kind of get in there, acclimate, let the plant access it, see what's going to happen, but don't overshoot back and forth. You do more harm, like pH correcting. If you go start at 5 and you get up to 7 by accident, then you go down to 5.9 with it down, and you come back. You're negating everything in its place because you're trying to get the perfect pH. You're better off feeding one time at 8.0 than feeding a perfect 6.5, but having to adjust with 5 ounces of pH up and down to get to that, because you're canceling everything in the same process. So, as Jack Herrera once told me, just sit there and listen to your plants. Stop pretending like we are God and making the thing happen exactly how it should be, because we're not God and we don't know exactly what these plants need, other than if you're watering and you go in the next day and you see what the difference is and you make a note and you comment on it. Watch your plants. That's it.
With your kids, like when they're little and they can't talk yet, but they can communicate with you. But I think a lot of people are like, well, this kid needs to eat. Feed him. But the kid is like, not hungry.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. Because I'm sure you had this, like, where you're just like, oh, yeah, he's not hungry. Don't make him eat.
Yeah.
But some people are like, they have this, like, they've read a book, and they're like,
Well, that's it. Plants aren't, especially cannabis, it's such a living organism that if you're sitting there and trying to just precisely, people want a 7-week recipe from nectar to just, how do you do it? But just give me what I need on the days I need it. It's like, I don't know if you have a power outage. I don't know if you have a high temp of 103. I don't know. There's no way to do a day-by-day feeding schedule for a custom person, because every bit of the variables in your environment, your food, your water source, your water temp, they all affect how this plant's going to react. Yeah. So you just got to be paying attention. You just got to, if you're just growing to just grow buds and then crush them into resin or rosin and dab them, then run GH or run a 3-part, something really nice and simple that you can just kind of hammer, follow their schedule to a T, and you'll probably get something that you can squeeze at the end. But our growers are in there because they're growing a medicine. Yeah. They love what they're doing. They love messing and manipulating the plant to enhance certain things, and those guys are paying attention when they do this. They notice that. Write that down. I'll remember that next time I need this to happen. I will do this to get to this result.
With the cat doesn't give a fuck what you want to do. The dog wants to please you. And so if you give too much input to that dog, he's like, okay, let's go fetch. And then, okay, let's go jump here. And you just wore this dog out because he just wants to please. It feels like a cannabis plant is kind of like that.
It's a dog.
It wants to do what you want it to do.
And will.
Yeah.
You just have to be
lettuce doesn't give a fuck.
No. Tomatoes will just be like, we do what we do.
Yeah, we're doing it.
Yeah. And we're going to have blossom and rot. So either way. You hear dog talk. Cats are stupid. Are cats stupid, Jack?
They are.
And they're smiley dog.
They're serial killers.
They're aliens.
I see them sneaking around the yard trying to get the birds.
They're aliens is why.
Yep. But they're going, fuck that. I want the birds.
When we start doing our Amazon videos, that one's got to end.
No, I know. Yeah, they don't like that
super
stuff.
Fat. Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
Because China.
Little ladies don't like it. No, because people have morals and that.
People are decent.
They are. Some are. The people that will buy for gardening are decent people. They're not all
I was thinking of the first Batman with Michael Keaton, Joker, Jack Nicholson. They're like talking on the news about decent people can't live here. He's like, decent people shouldn't live here.
They have no purpose in here. No place in this place.
Okay. Jeremy Jenkins, 4946. I'm using SLF every feed. Too much? And should newts be boosted during flower and after so many weeks of feeding with SLF during the veg? Do you understand? Well, so I don't understand the middle part of the question.
And should newts be boosted during flower after so many weeks of feeding? So, I see what he's.
Oh, is this
after if he's using SLF all the time,
oh, is SLF
and
making
veg? Do I have too much SLF? Do I need to keep boosting him because I have?
Is the SLF making the plant hungrier? Is that what he's asking?
It might. I mean, it could be just the delivery.
Sure. But is he using SLF too much?
It's really hard to overuse SLF.
Yeah.
Other than your wallet.
Yeah.
Do you realize that you're not very small? You're a very large animal. Like, you're not Juby. Okay, get down. Get down. Okay, get down. Here, right here. No, hey, sit. Get down. Down. Jack.
I will bite you.
Yes.
If you don't love me, I will bite you.
Love me hard. So, no, you're not using too much SLF. It's hard to use too much SLF. It just really becomes down to it's not worth the, it's expensive when it comes down to too much use. Jack, we're doing a show. Do you not understand? Come here.
No,
you go on.
Not understand.
You go over by Juby. Go by Juby. All right. That's a good boy. You stay there. We'll do something later.
Are you ever using not enough?
I mean, it's hard. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you're only using it once a month, you're not using enough.
Well, let me ask you this. If you just poured a gallon on straight every day, you wouldn't hurt anything, right?
You'd be broke and your wife or partner would leave you because you'd be putting so much money into something that's... And the downfall there is it would eventually eat all the organic matter out of your soil in time.
Yeah,
but
nothing there.
No, I mean, with our feeding schedules that we put out have that increase. It's not only to balance the plant's need because they're developing fruit and they're trying to put on flowers and yield, but we're also balancing that level of food with the amount of microbial activity we've put into the soil over the entire 12, 16, 18 weeks of the plant's life. So you want to increase your feed. You're not ever...
Would you say it's like cooking with salt? I mean, you've got a salt shaker by your oven, and every time you cook something, you put some salt on it. But you know you've had times where you're like, oh, this is salty.
Yeah, no, not at all, because you can't over SLF, but you can over salt fast.
True. Fast.
Like super fast. No, it's one of those where it's more like, I mean, cooking, there's nothing in there for me. There's
nothing there.
No, so we're going to stick with it. It's just adding living. The nice thing about using too much SLF is every time you add it, you're adding a different level and a different population of bacillus strains. Because if you just use it, once a week, you're getting, I mean, it's always changing. So the cool thing about SLF is every time you're using it, you're adding a slightly different population load of bacillus strains that are going to be just that much more diverse in the root zone. Other than what it can do to your wallet, there's not much you can really overdo. As long as you're feeding them nutrition at the same time, or every other time you're getting food in there for them to live on, there should be no problems other than wallet, again.
I can't remember where it was or when it was, but I remember this, like in my mind, the words. I saw a boss talking to an employee, and he said, the guy was asking a bunch of questions, and he said, just do the best you can, you'll get a feel for it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I think that's good advice for almost anything. Is in time you'll just kind of get a feel for it.
Yep.
And if this were some other thing, like gasoline, you probably it's easy to fuck up. But some sort of heavy nutrient salts, that kind of thing, you can mess it up. But it's hard to mess it up with SLF. So this is one thing where you can relax and get a feel for it without having a lot of anxiety.
I mean, if I'm putting 6 ounces of that in my juice every day, so between 3 people, so it's and I measure like this now because it's nothing that can hurt you, and the only thing it can really, like I said, it's only going to hurt your wallet because of the expense of it. But overusing it is really hard to do.
That was a long answer.
Yeah, it was really a butchered nightmare, but at the end, you can't...
It's a podcast.
Yeah. There's somebody in their grower right now just shaking their head. Just, can't believe
the Camus!
This retards.
76. Was I mistaken? Oh, hold on a second. I actually skipped one. Stephen Mayo. Mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise.
I want your DOR. Can you talk about drying the pot out completely before harvest? Is that a thing? Is this something that should be practiced with nectar?
I think we've spoken on this way back.
Yeah, but I mean, you're going to dry it when you hang it up, not when you have it in the ground,
yeah, but if
right?
they're not drawing up any more moisture at the end and the plant's literally cannibalizing the moisture out of its stem to do that last bit of a cure in the tops.
Yeah.
I've seen
it work, but it's...
Oh, yeah, no. I mean,
it's a high wire act, would you say?
It's not for everybody, that's for sure. And I know the ones that have tried it and had great success with their outcome, because it's like curing on the plant almost. Mm-hmm. You know, they leave the light cycle on and they, you know, the same time frame, but they just let them dry out in the pot versus drying them out hanging. And they get a little different level of sugar production at the very end.
Would you say that some of these, though, are like our good friend who is very good at growing but doesn't know a fucking thing about growing? That people that do things of this nature are oftentimes very natural growers, and that this is not for you
at all, and they made a huge mistake, and then their mistake was an awesome outcome.
Yeah,
it's one of those for sure.
There's a lot of people that do crazy stuff that it works out well because they have such a feel for it.
Yeah,
but you and me,
the problem there is if I know this is a 9-week genetic and I don't want to have it get over ripened, you know, by going 12 weeks. And I'm feeding up until the 7th or 8th week, and then I'm doing my final flush or ripening. Then to dry out the pot, that means I'm putting it into week 10, 11, and 12, maybe 10 and 11.
Yeah.
So now I'm 2 more weeks on a 9-week genetic, which then could potentially ruin the flower because it becomes overripe, and now you've got nothing but amber or, you know, dark trichomes, which then that's just a whole different headspace. I think it really comes down to the grower, but the guys that we knew that messed up when we were doing that experiment, and they just shoved everything aside, let them dry out, and just die in the corner, and that was some of the finest flour we've ever had. You know, we know that there's a benefit to it, but you know, I would hate to leave this episode and having a bunch of our listeners jump on this. All right, well, I'm at week 7. I'm just going to do 2 weeks of just drying out, because I think most people aren't prepared to dry them all the way out for the last 5-7 days because there's a high load of nutrition still in the potting soil. There's, you know, the flowers aren't ripening. They're not getting the fade they want. But if you have everything else that's looking great and you've done 5 days of good flushing, then letting them go to bone dry to harvest them, it speeds up the harvest process a little bit.
So these were professional drivers on a closed circuit to some extent, but why not try with one plant?
Well, that's the problem too, is that a lot of you can try it on one plant if you know you can get them out of the room by the next time your next veg round comes into bloom, because it's a timing situation where a lot of guys are on these set schedules, and now we're going to throw a 2-week dry out period, then I've just wasted 2 weeks on not producing flower in my space. So a lot of, you know, the guy that we were talking about earlier, and I think we did a show like way back about the guy when we were having a mess with Bloomcast for us, and he killed all his plants. They starved to death because we couldn't feed them enough. Yeah. And so they just died in the room, and he took the other half of the room and just kept them the same way, but just left these over there mad as hell and didn't even want to harvest them. He was so mad at us. And then at the very end, he harvested those because the flower all looked fine. The plants died. I mean, they starved to death, but the buds got huge. And when he brought those in, the quality of the fruit that died in the pot versus the stuff he finished was greater. So we're like, oh man, that's something very interesting. So what he did was he built a death room, if you will. He had a veg room, a flower room, and a hallway in between that he'd stick all the plants in at the end of their grow, and then just leave them on a 12 and 12 light cycle until they completely dried out. And then he would harvest them that way. And it was like pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't recommend it for everybody by any means. If you want to try one of your headier genetics that has more oil content and really dry one out on the side.
It's juicier to start with to where it can...
Well, you won't be as mad if you only ruin one plant than 10.
Yeah.
I mean, you ruined 10 plants. I didn't tell you to. That's an experiment you tried. But we've had people do it, and there is a benefit to drying them all the way out. Yeah. That's for sure.
People have jumped off cliffs and been blown back up again, though.
Yeah, that's true.
The Camus 76. Was I mistaken in thinking the source of your peat was from Lithuania?
Well, I'm not sure
Is it from Lithuania?
It's Lithuania and Latvia, so here and here. It's on the border area. It's one company called Klossman. They have facilities all over Europe and Germany, and but ours comes from Lithuania. Well, half of them come from Lithuania's side, and the other half come from the Latvia side, but they've got like 3,000 acres of sustainable peat bogs that they harvest from, and it crosses borders. And so it comes out of Latvia port, but a lot of it's harvested in Lithuania.
Most boring answer ever.
Yeah, well, the nice thing is if you go to their website, the Klossman website, and look at their sustainability page, you know, and we did a lot of research on peat moss. We don't do Canadian peat moss because it's dead, it's gone, and it's being stripped at such a gross. I mean, it's all being stripped, and that's the nature of growing and gardening. It's not a green, green industry by any means, but at least this company over there is taking the steps to replant their bogs as they harvest their bogs. Excuse me. So when they're peeling stuff off, they usually take that living organism off, roll it, harvest, and then roll it right back so the living peat is on the very top and is continuously rooting into the peat bog.
Okay. Well, because, you know, peat, originally we think of Ireland, where it wasn't sustainable other than because there was, like, hardly anyone there, what with the potato famine and all. And so people were just surviving.
75 feet of peat.
Yeah.
And they use it as a fuel source to heat their homes.
But it was like, they're not ever going to go through this until you like, oh, well, let's just get America in here and have
let's use a consumer industry and then turn potted plants into the nursery industry and the garden industry is probably pound for pound more poisonous to this planet than your biggest chemical commercial farm. Because these people are warriors. They go out to Home Depot, they get their Roundup and their Triple 30, and they overfeed, and they do their lawn and garden, their feed and seed, and their weed and feed, and their crap that literally is high phosphate garbage that goes in, washes into the storm system, goes right into our creeks and rivers, chokes out the life in the streams, goes right to the...
No regulation.
No, you can
whereas a farm, there's like a guy there every day, like, no, don't do that shit.
Unless they're funded by the big GOV, then they get what they're told to use, and they get to do that. So, yeah, it's pound for pound, the home gardener. And think about when you buy that 1 gallon rose, that started in a cell this big, and then went to a cell this big, and then to a 3-inch, and then to a 6-inch, and then they went to the 1 gallon, and they've been fed and fed and fed with all this runoff. So it's gone through probably 1.5 pounds of just plastic before it makes it into your... And that's one rose.
Yeah.
Go to the garden center and go, wow, that's a whole lot of roses right here. Yeah, that's probably 150 pounds of just pure plastic resin that's going into a landfill. But hey, I'm growing it organically, so that's what matters. That's the worst thing about our damn product is our damn bottles. If I could get rid of our bottles and put everything in a cellulose bag, that'd be great. But hard to ship that. Hard to ship a bag.
Let's just run hoses to everyone.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that should be no problem. Get right over I-5.
Aqua Scapegoat 2725. Is there too low of a pH for foliar spray? Yes. Spoiler alert. My tap is 6.4-ish, and when I add Poseidon, Athena, etc., I'm in the 5s. Yeah, this is not a big deal. One.
I mean, you can dissolve a plant with too low pH. Acid's acid, but anything in the range. Mid-5s to mid-6s is ideal because you want it to be somewhat acidic to make that penetration into the cuticle and the stomata of the plant. So, it's too low would be if you're in the 4s, even like 5.1, 5.2, I'd be questioning my plant cell health at that point. But we're not trying to deliver calcium, so really... We're trying to get it into the foliage, and because that wax is coating the plant, you need acid to break it down to get in there. So
it is too low. What do? You throw a little, like some Olympus in there? Or what do you do?
I mean, drops, like tiny drops of Olympus until you're like at the low end of your 5.5, 5.6. Yeah, or not. Maybe just pull it right off the top in the most liquidy form so you're leaving no chalk.
Just a little bit of just like give it a little, because you only need a little bit. You just want some water with a little bit of limestone in there.
Yeah.
Okay. See, that's a good answer. And quick. as opposed to the last one that was bad and long.
Oh yeah, people are not questioning that. Well, they do use lots of plastic. We should get rid of these companies. We need to go to. Well, it's like Down to Earth. We used to, when I worked for them, we were so green, even our packages could be composted. And then after about 2 years of those, and all the boring weevils and mice and everything that can eat right through your organic package and shit and destroy the inner parts of it, then they went to internal plastic bags and hot glue to keep the pests out. I'm going, well, we just took the most sustainable, beautiful organic packaging and put shit you can't compost it with now.
I think we'll go the middle road here.
Yeah, so it's that perception of looking like it's something, but in all of reality, it's no different. They've just added a whole nother level of plastic to it.
There is no greater overcompensation than when there's a problem in a business.
No, I could price all my, like if I could find a value in Bloom Chaos where it's worth $6,000 a gallon, I'd put everything in glass because... You're already paying for the shipping. I'll build the shipping into the price. $6,000 a gallon. I'll put everything in gallons, but ship a gallon.
This makes you wonder about
ship
beer.
a glass a gallon, 4 bottles. So you're adding about 2 pounds a gallon in just packaging, and now you're shipping ching 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 across the country through the ex-football league of NFL, I mean UPS, who gets like place kickers that have been rejected from high school, and they put them on trucks, download packages, and now you're going to put 60 pounds of glass bottles in a box and hope to God it makes it there? Yeah, no. Glass isn't the answer unless you're overpriced.
You're those guys.
Yeah.
With the mason jars. Yeah. Yes, mayhem. Yes, mayhem. 7. Orchids are sensitive to salts but love cocoa husks, and after a 2 to 3 day process, some boil the husk for at least 8 hours, then rinse it 3 to 4 times, then because it is said the husks bind up calcium, soak it in CalMag for another 8 hours, then rinse it again, then dry it.
Orchid people they like their orchids, and this person's not wrong.
Okay, so instead of doing all that, could you just use some SLF?
The SLF would definitely help with all of these pieces. The thing I don't like about the CalMag soaking is that you're putting the salts right back in calcium nitrate, magnesium nitrate, and the downfall of that is that, orchids are also kind of sensitive to high nitrogen levels and don't do well with nitrogen on...
Well, if I was going to do all this, why wouldn't I just give them the CalMag? Not that would work.
Because the salt of cocoa is a different salt. That's an Na3 right from the ocean, so it's a hot salt. It's definitely
okay.
It's what we wash off our cocoa. So like our cocoa fiber comes in at 20 parts per million because that's the water measurement. So we've washed all the sodium off. But yeah, if the SLF will work as a digestant, breaking that salt away and making it go away faster, and then literally soaking it in something like Demeter's or even Gaia for that matter, something just to rebuild that in there. And you're doing root soaks. I do a Herculean, Gaia, sometimes Chaos if I need a new spike or not. If I don't need a spike, I don't put the Chaos in. And a little Demeter's, and I do a weekly soak with that. And I can't stop them from blooming.
So you got it in a little bucket to keep it in one place. You pull it out of the bucket. You stuff it into this.
I fill my sink up
with the liquid.
With my solution. So I'm at like give or take 3 to 5 mils of most of these things. I put them in there per gallon, and then I take all my pots.
Just in the pot. You don't pull it out of the pot. It's
because I have sleeves.
Oh, okay.
Because they live in nets. Because they don't want to be in soil.
No,
they're breeding.
Yeah.
So I have these little net pots. I take them out and I stick them right in the solution and I let them sit there for like 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
Then I put them up on a rack and let them drip dry, air dry. Okay. And then I put them back in their little containers back where they belong.
And this container is a decorative container.
It's a pretty little pot.
Okay.
And so, or I'll even get really lazy and sometimes, because they're all in pots with no holes.
Oh.
So they're a net pot in a container with no hole.
Okay,
sure. So I'll take my feed solution, I'll just go and I'll flood everything. Then I go and I just pour all that solution back. When I get to the very end, I just go to the first one and I start draining them back into my container. And then I just go pour that out on my garden bed. And it's because they don't want to be soaked, they don't want to be suffocated, but they want all that nutrition like you're missing it on them. Ideally, foliar feeding their root zone all the time is ideal. I'm way too lazy to try to do that, and it's messy, and it's...
Well, and then you turn into a Bonneville, and you're just
Yeah, well, and I don't have a greenhouse. If I had a greenhouse, it'd be a different story. But this is my kitchen.
Yeah.
So it's just a soak and dry and go. But yeah, no, what the SLF, you could get rid of the heavy, long water soaker, the boiling aspect. And really, it's testing that cocoa to begin with to see how salty it is. Because if it's super salty, then flushing it first with just a Herculean soak or that SLF soak will definitely reduce the sodium faster.
Why wouldn't I just flush it out of course instead of measuring? I mean, do I need to figure out?
It's hard to measure because they're talking about husks, so they're talking about chunks of cocoa fiber. They're not talking about a pith or a hair. They're like bark.
Oh, so like pieces of a coconut.
Well, because traditionally orchid bark is just tree bark.
Yeah.
That they chip up and then your roots just kind of go through. Because orchids will live just on the side of a tree.
Yeah.
And through the moisture in the air is how they survive.
This is just some mechanical thing to hold them up so they can stand up straight.
But they love the cocoa husk because of the texture, the roots seem to... It's just more gentle to the
This is
orchid.
like if I broke up a coconut shell and like those chunks, or is this like
but
coir?
I mean, you'd have to chunk them.
Yeah,
like
but this isn't the coir that's all that. This is like the actual...
Yeah, it's a husk. Yeah,
okay.
You can shred that into a pith.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Good answer, I suppose. Don 1! Quick question for Scott. If running a 9-week strain, what's the latest that you would start your ripening phase?
Week 8. Like, at the end of week 8, going into week 9, would be the latest. But usually it's about 10 days out.
So, but it's the end of the process. So you would not go less than a week. You wouldn't go more than 2 weeks?
I don't see the benefit more than 2 weeks, personally, not to ripen. Especially that in the 9 week, they're still producing weight in that last week 8. So, no, I would say...
So better 2 days than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then you want them to crunch up, and so you're just, I mean, why aren't you just... This is just a dumb question. This is when it's a 9-week strain. We've just, through time and looking at this, we realized...
We hope the breeder's right
that
this is a 9-week strain.
But if it's a 9-week strain or a 10 or 8, whatever it is, you're still watching this thing, right?
Well, that's
What are you looking for?
I mean, personally, I go for... When I'm at about 40 to 50% clouding, 50% clear, then I know in about 7 to 10 days, I'm going to have a couple ambers and most all cloud. And I'm looking for that middle of the ground... Because every different effect or a different ripening stage gives you a different effect on how it works inside of you medicinally.
Okay.
And so I prefer getting them to where I'm not all amber. I prefer more of like a 10 to 20% amber and all cloudy trichomes.
So this isn't a strict math optimization. This is a growing it for what you prefer.
Oh, absolutely. Because if you take my genetic and run it all the way to full amber, that couch lock versus if you only let 1% go amber and it's all cloudy and you can still participate in society from smoking that. That's the big difference in my opinion is I like to be able to function while I'm medicating because, I mean, when I'm in pain, I can't just sit there and have a train of thought or have a conversation. It's too painful. I can't sit there and I'm thinking about my pain, not the conversation.
And it's not even that it's so painful, it's that it's painful enough that I can't think about anything else.
Literally, it's that migrine where you're like, you want to poke it right out of your eyeball.
Yeah, and just like, this is what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm sitting here being in pain. I'm not doing anything else in my life. Yeah.
If I take something that's a full amber harvest and it's completely over ripened, then now I can't function.
Now what I'm doing is
I don't care what
trying
you're
to find
saying.
the floor.
Yeah, we're not talking because I stopped listening to you, period. And it's not because of pain. It's great for pain. And actually, I prefer those more in the evening when I need to sleep and I'm in pain, and that helps me take the thought off of hurting and go to bed. But, it's really, you still got to watch. I mean, bless their hearts, there's a lot of great breeders out there, but now I'm starting to see a lot more of them not giving the time frames that these things should be maturing at. They're crossing everything with everything, but they don't know how they're even supposed to be grown.
It's a guess or a marketing ploy, not
literally, it's a name-calling business now. So you really have to just be paying attention. If it says 9 weeks, at about week 7, I'd be paying attention to the trichomes. And your best friend is you and your notebook, because if you're documenting everything
Yeah.
Historically, you can go back to everything you did because you documented it, and you can find out whether or not it's real. And how to then, how do I grow this plant that's supposed to be a 9-week, but I found out it's a 10-week. Because if it's a 10-week and they're telling you it's 9-week and you start flushing at week 7, you've just lost 3 whole weeks in there that you're going, why is my yield down? Well, yeah, you start watering them only 3 weeks out. But if there's showing 0 signs of ripening at week 7, or let's say week 8, you're scoping everything and everything's freaking crystal clear and there's not any discoloration in the foliage, this ain't a 9-week genetic. This thing's going to go 10 because I'm not even seeing the beginnings of it trying to ripen. Yeah. So pay attention, but if you know for a fact it ends at,
Yeah, you've done this
no
many
problem,
times,
9 weeks, so we're at 63 days. On 60, on day 57, I'd be flushing at the latest, so you have that last at least 6 to 10 days of flushing out.
Good.
I don't know, Don. Email me.
Julie Almonte 6355. Julie Almonte. We're not. You know who we are. What's up, guys? I have 3 separate questions for you. All right. We'll do 3. I remember Scott saying if you constantly use Hygeia, you will never have hydrophobic soil. So is there any negative effect besides financial from using Hygeia every feed or using with days-old seedlings? I dabble with autos and usually put them in their forever home. So I like to try to use Hygeia to keep the entire pot from going hydrophobic since I water in small amounts at first.
Well, that'd be good. For that.
In your particular situation, it sounds like Hygeia is a good tool for you.
For that,
it's worked well for you.
Well, and that's it. Is because they're not going to be oversaturating the container at the beginning because from what I understand from the auto growers, you don't want to be transplanting them a lot because it makes them mad.
Oh, okay.
Photo plants, they don't care. They transplant them, you go through a little shock, but then they can go right back to charging. These auto plants, they don't like to have the roots disturbed a lot, so a lot of guys will start them in this container they're going to finish them in, which is fine. However, like he's saying, or they're saying,
the soil out here is not getting touched for weeks on end.
Well, like in there, I've got 300 plants planted. Yeah. But I have one tray that I'm going to plant something in succession, so I've left them dry.
Right.
Well, now it's hydrophobic. It's like the whole side of the tray is taking water, but this is just repelling the water. So once you get a chance to, because you're not going to use a lot of hydrogen or Hygeia in that first stage either, because you're giving them very little bits of volume at the beginning. But once they start developing, you're growing that ring of moisture. That's when the Hygeia will come in and help drag that food and moisture into those pockets that are been dried out over a 3 to 5 week period of time while you're waiting for the autoflower roots to get down in there. So adding the Hygeia after week 2 or 3 will help keep that outer ring non-hydrophobic, so it can keep accepting moisture once you start increasing your volume.
So I'm putting this in my feed mixture?
Yeah.
Am I watering in a wider pattern than I might normally so that I get it more into the soil?
Well, not necessarily, because as we've taught if you water, then the plants don't want to grow into saturation. They want to grow out of saturation into air.
Sure.
And if they can't breathe where they're growing, they don't grow into it because they know that's death. So if you just water where the plant is, the excess that doesn't soak this area will leach into the drier areas, and the plant roots will want to go find that. So once it dries up here, the plants go look, and then they find it here, but then they dry it up. So the next watering, you water that space and a little bit further out, so then they keep wanting to search.
Following the roots, and it's going a little past.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Drip line. If your canopy is this big, your drip ring is here. If your canopy is this big, your drip ring is here. Not here and not out here. And when you look at every big tree out there, the end of its roots are at the end of the canopy because that's where the plant sheds water, and that's where those little capillary roots are sucking up the moisture to feed that tree. They're rarely at the base of the tree, and they're not 42 feet over there. They go straight down and out that far.
Not in my yard.
No, because we built sidewalks and foundations.
There's gravel. So there's this much soil in the gravel. So when I go to plant a plant, I have to take an axe out there with me to chop through a root of my tree to make a hole.
Well, and then we have poorly designed, trees for neighborhoods and municipal areas that they should never, like cottonwoods have no place in the neighborhood, and willow has no place in the neighborhood because those roots, they'll find a poop line and go chase that all the way back to the sewer center where they're cleaning the poop out of your water.
Well, my neighborhood was an orchard, but evidently they just flattened it out and threw gravel over the whole thing.
No, they clear cut it and then topsoiled it, so you still have living root. You'll get cherry suckers that pop up, I bet, in that neighborhood. Because it's all cherry orchards, too, isn't it?
Just random stuff just popping up. Okay, next, we're still on the same question. You think that's Julia? It's Julia. Julito Almonte. We'll figure it out. Maybe you'll comment in the comments. Next, I want to know...
Racist.
I don't get that. I'm just going to
because we're attacking a name that we can't pronounce.
Oh, that we can't pronounce.
We're clearly white guys who can't roll our
Clearly
R's.
white guys can't roll. No, here. I want to know if the temperature of foliar solutions matter. I know room temp is best for root drenches, so is there an optimal temp where leaves take in nutrients better? I mean, is there much to be gained from just pouring out of your tap and it's a little cold and you just... No, Scott, go ahead. We're not busy.
Oh, I'm reading the name. It's got to be Julito.
I thought you were just texting somebody.
No, I'm reading the name. I had to go look up the email so I could find the email.
Julito. All right, I think it's Julito Almonte.
I think it is Julito.
Yeah, that's Julito. A cool name.
Anyway, so...
foliar, temperature of the water. Just pour it out of the tap. It's cold. It's hot. I guess they got hot water down in Australia now. Like they're pouring out of the tap. It's like hot because it's so hot down there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Room temp is ideal. Too cold, the stomata won't open for it, and too hot, well, it's just too hot. So, I mean, mid 60s to low 80s, anywhere in there.
By the time you've got it mixed up and everything sitting there. Unless you've got some weird situation. You're in Colorado or East Texas.
Yeah. Never, tap water fresh out of the tap is never a good idea because it's just always too cold.
Yeah.
And same with, watering the root zone. They don't want cold feet, so don't water them with 39-degree water. It's not a good idea. And foliar feeding, just the same thing. If it's good enough for the root zone, it's good enough for the foliage.
Okay. Last question. This is the last question from Julio. I use a Blue Lab pH pen and notice when mixing with a Sturricane.
Yeah, Sturricane family.
I invented that name.
Did you?
Yes.
Bill, is that right?
Bill is going off. You know how Bill talks. Bill's a wonderful man, but and I'm like, Bill. And he's like, what? And I go, Sturricane. And he goes, that's a good name.
Come up with a sticker for it. Yeah, good machine. Good machine.
The last question. I use the Blue Lab pH pen and notice when mixing with a Sturricane, the last pH value of the solution is higher when it's stagnant compared to when it's moving. I assume it's more accurate when moving, but I'd like clarification. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, it's way more accurate. Because then when it all settles, everything that would bring your pH down is on the very bottom, and that pH correction is up in the top. But once you're mixed, the Sturricane is... I mean, I gotta say, that thing revolutionized feeding. Yeah. All the people are like, oh, just shake your bottles. I agree. I don't ever use my Sturricane for shaking shit anymore.
No.
Except for I'll rip a brand new bucket, so I'll, get it to stir it one time because it's been sitting on the floor for 6 weeks, so it's really compact. But once I rip that bucket and it's back into liquid form, I can shake all those no problem.
Yeah.
Mixing my nutrition is... Yeah. You add it, and it's just, and then it's blended.
You know what's going on. You can just...
You see it blend, but for pH checking, especially with nectar, and then this will make a lot of, non-Sturricane owners not super happy to hear, but, when I was testing with my arm...
It's not the same.
Yeah, you're sitting there, you're like having to do this, and then you go like that, and you can literally, you
can watch it as it goes around. Yeah,
well, you're grabbing a chunk of Gaia with no Olympus. Oh, here's Herculean with a lot of Olympus. Oh, here's some Poseidon Zyme. So you're not getting what the Sturricane's homogenizing it all into one nice even blend, and you're getting the most accurate reading you can get, both ppm and pH. So I test it with your Sturricane. Going, the guys who don't have Sturricanes, just be stirring when you test your pH or check your pH, because just letting it sit that long.
One of these things, though, where you're drop. Scratch it.
It's hard. Yeah. Well, what I do, what I did pre-Sturricane is I had a clip on my pen. And I clipped it onto my bucket, and I'd sit there and do this and stir it, and then just keep stirring and watch my. Once it kind of settles and does one. I don't like these 1 pH pens that gives you a one-time value and then turns off.
No, you want, I
need something that's like 6.5, 6.6, 6.5, 6.5, 6.3, 6.4, 6. Okay, I'm in range. Go. But when it's like 7, you're like, oh, I better bring it down. 4. Yeah, I better bring it back up. 6.9. So, but yeah, keep your Sturricane on. Your most accurate is when everything is homogenized and moving together. Then you're getting your most accurate reading.
Good answer. Keith Moschino, 672. Thanks, guys. This is my first time growing with nectar. I am using the Roman regimen, getting ready to flip to bloom. My grow is going beautifully. Like none of the other grows have could come close. Want to tell you all thanks for all the shows I watch and all them, and I've learned so much from them. Looking forward to the next one. Only question I can think of is, and this is good, he's only got one question, is my leaves are really soft to the touch. I've never had that before. Is it an issue?
Are they like soft?
I think they're just kind of soft like, kitty, warm kitties,
like
buckle fur.
Yeah, I mean, they're not rigid and sharp like an over-nitrogened plant, probably.
I'm just reading it from this.
No, I would wonder, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
So are you used to more like rigid, sharp, serrated, bladed foliage? Because then that's usually just too much potassium or too much nitrogen. The overgreening, and this is just giving you a healthy amount of protein nitrogen.
This is just a plant.
Yeah, they're just happy.
To
sounds like you have happy plants. But yeah,
probably not.
As long as they're not doing this and they're soft. If they're doing this and soft, then they need water and they're probably dying. But if they're like praying and they're soft texture and they're not rigid, that's just happy. That's a happy plant, as Bob Ross would say.
Happy plant.
Just put no happy plants over here.
Keith McGreeny. Hey, Keith. Hey, guys. Thanks for all you're doing to explain the intricacies of this unique nutrient line. I am experimenting with companion plants in my indoor grow, but instead of plowing the cover crop into the number 4 and letting it degrade a bit, I'm letting them live in a circle outside the cannabis plant. My question concerns the inability to control the nitrogen fixing ability of these cover crops. Will it be difficult to withdraw nitrogen as I normally do with nectar to encourage the fade at the end of flowers? This is turning a good question. Or is the amount of nitrogen contributed by these cover crops negligible? Sorry, Keith. Compared
started really kind of lame and boring, and we were kind of wondering where we were going with it.
It was just long, and I was just like, oh man, I don't
Maybe
like to
I shouldn't have copied and pasted this one. So, has companion plants, lets them grow the full cycle without turning them into the soil, and is concerned
when he gets to the end, he's trying to ripen this thing up.
And the companion plants are still alive?
Yes. Are they nitrogen?
They're fine. Because nitrogen fixing cover crops, they don't release their nitrogen until they decompose in the soil. So you've got to cut them off from their ability to fix nitrogen. Once they're cut off and they decay and start breaking down, then the nodes that capture that nitrogen start to break and release that nitrogen back into the soil for the plants or the next round of crops to utilize.
It's a circle of life kind of thing. Yeah. As long as they're still growing, they're sucking up.
Yeah, if anything, you're probably don't take this the wrong way. But when I've grown indoor cover crops, I kind of tick up the Medusa or tick up the Gaia just a tad to kind of
compensate for
knowing they're going to eat it.
Yeah, they're eating.
I grow a healthy crop, so it's keeping those things fed. But as far as the fade and such, you shouldn't see anything different in the realm of too much nitrogen, because they don't really release that nitrogen until you kill that crop. So that they're just storing it, and then the nice thing is when everything's done and you mow that in and till it up, then you're actually putting very awesome forms of nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen, back into the soil, so you can reduce, maybe the Medusa, the Pegasus, or Athena for the first few weeks in the next round, because the plants can access that death of the cover crop.
This is foliar feeding the roots.
Yeah, and better. I mean, nature's full of your feed. Yeah. You don't have to do anything or get it derived from it.
But these plants, they're like saving that all up so they can feed themselves again for the next year.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about cover cropping for the winter is, you put a root zone so all your elements don't leach out from rain and snow, but that same cover crop is fixing nutrition into the soil, so when you do kill it and till it in, not only you're getting the organic matter that'll break down and turn back into humates or humus or back into soil, but all of the nodules that are in those root zones start releasing their nitrogen in very nice, gentle forms for the next crop you plant. So they get free fertilizer in the sense of they get the compost of the decaying plant and the release of the nitrogen-fixing nodes that plant had fixed into the soil that whole season.
And these are more degradable roots than you would get from your cannabis plant.
They don't just put roots on. They put on tons of hairs.
Yeah, and so it's just going to...
Yeah, you don't have to sit there. I mean, literally one good enzyme and you're going to wipe out that root zone, the dead, decaying one, and turn that all into plant food. So, you shouldn't have any problems. I'd love to hear your end results on what you see. But now, from every cover crop, most of the guys I work with in the years of doing this, they leave the cover crop all the way because they grow the cover crop not as a companion plant for fixing nutrition. They do it for preventing soil evaporation, having healthier microbial activity in the soil, better fungal growth. I mean, they're putting a shaded canopy over the soil to protect everything that lives in that area. Mycorrhiza lives in this much of the top of the soil, so if you're just being constantly baked with LEDs or double-endeds or whatever, you're cooking these little fungi or the spores. Yeah, they're hell. But you put a nice rainforest canopy of moisture over them, you're benefiting everything in your root zone for the long term and the long game. So, I wouldn't worry about that. You should be fine.
Okay. That's a show, I think.
It is the show.
Yo, OCGFAM show.
Sounds the same every time.
I sing it fresh every time, though. I never copy it.
Really?
Every time I sing it fresh.
Sing it.
The OCGFAM show. Pretty good. It happens every day. It's the OCGFAM show. See you tomorrow.